Imagine a world where the skies, once an exclusive male domain, suddenly opened to women.
Now, picture witnessing this radical paradigm shift from behind barbed wire as an enemy prisoner of war during World War II, as male pilots deployed to combat. The United States launched a revolutionary initiative, the Women Air Force Service Pilots, or WASP. These trailblazing women, over 1,000 strong, defied societal norms, proving their unparalleled capabilities by flying virtually every aircraft in the U.S. military's inventory, from advanced trainers to heavy bombers, across the vast American continent. In stark contrast, Germany, under the Third Reich, enforced a rigid doctrine, Kinder, Kirche, children, kitchen, church. Any notion of women in flight, especially military aviation, was deemed unnatural, impossible, even a perversion. This profound clash of ideologies and the quiet courage it ignited forms the heart of an extraordinary true story. If you're captivated by narratives of resilience and historical defiance, please consider liking this video and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. What other unsung heroes from wartime history have challenged your perceptions? It was against this backdrop of irreconcilable global differences that Greta Hoffmann, a young German prisoner of war in a Texas internment camp, found herself an unwilling, yet riveted, witness. Day after day, she watched twin-engine transport aircraft descend, their propellers rhythmically cutting through the humid air. But it wasn't the roaring engines that shattered her world. It was the pilots emerging from the cockpits. Not burly, grizzled men, but women, often young, effortlessly commanding powerful military machines, inspecting their flight logs with a casual authority that belied the sheer audacity of their presence. The disbelief rippled through the camp. Women flying military aircraft. Impossible, whispered an older inmate. Elsa, articulating the profound shock felt by many. Greta herself, conditioned since childhood to accept her nation's rigid views, felt her hands tremble. Everything she had been taught, every societal expectation ingrained since birth, was being openly challenged by the sight of these American WASPs, performing what, for them, was merely a routine operation, towing aerial targets, testing repaired aircraft, ferrying vital materiel across the nation, tasks essential to the Allied war effort, yet explicitly forbidden to women in her homeland. That night, sleep eluded Greta in her bunk. The pilotess' unassuming confidence replayed in her mind. She had disembarked as if piloting a military aircraft were nothing remarkable, simply another day's work. In the enveloping darkness, Greta finally voiced a question she had never dared utter aloud. What if they allowed me to fly? The following morning, the labor detail brought them into closer proximity to the airfield fence. Greta deliberately volunteered for the water buckets, the most arduous task, which no one else desired. This strategic choice placed her just 30 feet from the fence line. Within the hour, she observed 3 distinct WASPs successfully land. One was tall, moving with an inherent athleticism. Another was petite, requiring a stretch to reach the cargo hatch handle. The third was older, perhaps 35, with distinguished streaks of gray in her dark hair. "You're utterly obsessed," remarked Katharina, a former nurse from Berlin. Barely 20, and possessing a face that could have effortlessly endorsed commercial products in Pista. "What difference does it make if they allow women to fly? We will still emerge victorious." "Will we, though?" Greta murmured, a subtle challenge in her tone. Katharina's eyes widened in alarm. "You cannot utter such sentiments. Not even airy. Especially not here." Yet Greta's conviction in German victory had waned around the time of the Battle of though the guards remained silent. The newspapers they circulated conveyed a stark reality. The Allies had landed in France. The Russians were relentlessly pushing from the east. The Third Reich was in the throes of collapse, a truth evident to all but the most fervent fanatics. "When I was 16, Greta recounted, her gaze still fixed on the aircraft. "My brother once took me gliding. My father discovered it and subjected us both to a beating. He declared it unnatural for women to fly." "He was correct," Katharina stated unthinkingly. "Was he?" Greta turned to face her directly. That woman just landed a 12-ton bomber in a challenging crosswind. Do you honestly believe that was unnatural? Before Katerina could formulate a reply, an American guard approached. Hoffmann, your supervisor wishes to see you. Greta's heart plummeted. Had her questions, her persistent staring, Ben reported. She followed the guard to a storage shed located near the fence. Inside, however, was not her supervisor, but the blonde WASP from the previous day. Up close, the pilot appeared even younger than Greta had imagined. Perhaps 23. Her leather jacket prominently displayed a patch reading, "NAS San Diego, you're the one who persistently watches us, aren't you?" The pilot inquired, her German accented but perfectly clear. I don't understand," Greta stammered, caught off guard. "Don't attempt to deceive me. I've observed you. Each time we land, you cease your work and stare intently." The pilot took a step closer. She carried the faint scent of oil and something unexpectedly sweet, perhaps chewing gum. Why? Greta's mouth felt inexplicably dry. A multitude of cautious answers immediately sprang to mind. However, the woman's direct, confident demeanor rendered any prevarication impossible. Because in Germany, Greta articulated slowly, we were told that women could not fly, that we lacked the necessary strength, the intelligence, that our physical bodies were simply not capable. The pilot offered a smile, though it conveyed no friendliness. "And what is your assessment now?" Before Greta could offer a response, the shed door burst open abruptly. A guard stood framed in the doorway, his rifle raised and aimed. "Ma'am, distance yourself from the prisoner." The WASP pilot raised her hands, betraying no discernible fear. "Easy, Corporal. I'm simply here to retrieve a spare part. This woman was assisting me. It was an outright fabrication." Greta held her breath. The corporal's eyes narrowed, scrutinizing Greta, then the pilot, then returning to Greta. Finally, he lowered his rifle. 5 minutes, then she returns to her detail. Once the guard had departed, the pilot turned back to Greta. "You owe me one." That situation could have escalated significantly. "Why did you fabricate a story for me?" Greta asked, astonished. "Because I observed your expression when I landed yesterday. I recognize that particular look." The pilot extended her hand. "Nancy Corbett, from Sacramento, California. I've been flying since I was 17. Greta hesitated for a moment, then cautiously accepted her hand. "Greta Hoffmann, from Hamburg. Never flown. But you desire to." It was a statement, not a question. Greta nodded, feeling an internal barrier. Something she had kept rigorously locked away for years, began to crack open. This narrative, a profound testament to courage and transformation, underscores the often unseen facets of history. Greta recounted. The Luftwaffe required communications operators. I excelled at it, proficient and swift, with Morse code. Yet, every day I witnessed pilots ascend into aircraft I would never be permitted to touch. Men who, in some cases, could barely spell their own names. My only experience with aircraft was through manuals. Nancy produced a pack of cigarettes from her jacket and offered one to Greta, who politely declined. In America, Nancy stated, lighting her own, they promulgated the same narrative. Women were deemed incapable of flight, too emotional, too weak, not possessing the correct physical build. She exhaled a stream of smoke toward the ceiling. Then the war commenced, and suddenly, they found they required us. Quite ironic, wouldn't you agree? You proved them mistaken, Greta whispered. No. Nancy's voice sharpened with conviction. I proved myself right. There is a fundamental distinction. She observed Greta for an extended moment. What level of repercussions would you face if someone observed us conversing? Considerable. Would that deter you from returning? The rational answer was yes. The safe answer was unequivocally yes. Yet Greta had been rational and safe for 4 years, and it had yielded no progress. No, she stated firmly. Nancy smiled. A genuine expression this time. Excellent, because I have a question. If you possessed the ability to fly, if someone were to instruct you, would you seize the opportunity? That is an impossibility. I did not inquire about its possibility. I asked if you would. Through the grimy window of the shed, Greta watched another WASP bring a trainer aircraft down to Earth. Her thoughts drifted to Klaus, her brother, who had maintained until his death a staunch belief that women belonged grounded. She recalled her father, who had physically punished her for daring to harbor such aspirations. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I would." Nancy extinguished her cigarette. "Then a more substantial conversation is warranted, but not here, and not now. Tomorrow afternoon at roll call, converge at the northeast corner of the camp. Can you ensure your presence?" Greta's heart hammered against her ribs. The proposition was audacious. It was inherently dangerous. It could easily lead to solitary confinement, or far worse. "Yes," she affirmed. Nancy departed without another word. Greta returned to her work detail, her hands trembling so violently that she struggled to maintain her grip on the water bucket. That evening, Katerina cornered her within the barracks. What did that American woman want? Nothing. She required assistance moving some equipment. "You are fabricating a story." Katerina's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Whatever scheme you are contemplating, cease it immediately. They are the enemy, Greta. Do not permit yourself to forget that." Yet, lying in her bunk after lights out, Greta found herself unable to recall why Nancy Corbett was supposed to be her adversary. This was the woman who had fabricated a story to protect her, the woman who possessed the unfathomable ability to fly. Late that afternoon, a formidable thunderstorm swept across the Texas plains, transforming the camp into a challenging labyrinth of mud and steam. Greta exploited the ensuing chaos, discreetly slipping away to the northeast corner during roll call. Most prisoners huddled near the distribution center, anxiously awaiting letters from home that rarely materialized. Nancy was already there, standing concealed within the shadow of a maintenance shed. She had exchanged her flight jacket for a plain work shirt, a futile attempt at appearing inconspicuous. Americans, even in civilian attire, invariably looked distinctively American to well-fed, too self-assured. "You arrived," Nancy observed simply. "I stated I would. People often make many assertions." Nancy glanced around cautiously, then extracted a folded paper from her pocket. "This is a fundamental schematic for an AT-6 Texan. We utilize it for advanced training." She pressed it into Greta's hand. "Study it meticulously. Master it. Every component, every system." Greta stared at the paper as if it might spontaneously combust. "Why are you entrusting this to me?" "Because I have observed you for 3 consecutive days. You do not merely look at aircraft as a prisoner seeking an escape route. You regard aircraft in the same manner I do, as if they embody poetry." Nancy's voice softened slightly. "And because I believe you deserve to comprehend the inner workings of the very thing you so profoundly crave. This," Greta struggled to find the appropriate words, "this could be interpreted as an act of espionage. It is merely a schematic for a trainer aircraft, hardly classified information." Nancy smiled faintly. "Furthermore, if it provides you any reassurance, an AT-6 lacks the necessary range for any effective escape attempt." A palpable sense of relief permeated Greta's chest. This endeavor was not about escape. It was not about warfare. This was about something she had buried so deeply that she had almost forgotten its existence. The dream. "My brother used to sketch planes in the margins of his textbooks," Greta murmured reflectively. "He was killed in France in 1942. I am truly sorry. Do not be." He believed implicitly in the Reich, in Hitler. He believed women belonged at home, bearing children. Greta looked up, a new resolve in her eyes. "If he could witness me now, engaging in conversation with you, he would be overwhelmed with shame. Would you prefer to garner his pride, or finally take to the skies?" The question hung between them, a profound challenge. Before Greta could articulate a response, shouts erupted from the main camp. Both women froze instantly. A guard was now running directly toward them, his rifle raised menacingly. "Prisoner, distance yourself from the fence." Nancy held her ground firmly. "She is merely inquiring about the mail delivery schedule for the northeast perimeter. That area is restricted." The guard's face was young, his expression hardened and unforgiving. "Ma'am, you are well aware of the regulations." "Indeed I am, and I am also aware that prisoners are permitted to ask questions. Nancy's voice cut through the tense air with the sharp clarity of glass. Or has that particular regulation been altered? The tense standoff endured for approximately 10 seconds. To Greta, it felt like an eternity. Finally, the guard lowered his weapon. Hoffmann, return to your barracks. Immediately. Clutching the schematic tightly, Greta fled. That night, lying in her bunk, the paper secreted beneath her mattress, she heard Elsa whisper from the adjacent cot, "They will apprehend you, regardless of what clandestine activities you are undertaking." "I am aware," Greta replied. "Is it truly worth the risk?" Greta closed her eyes, visualizing Nancy's face, witnessing the plane's land, seeing herself, incredibly, at the controls. "I do not yet know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Over the subsequent 3 nights, Greta, by the faint beam of a flashlight, meticulously memorized the schematic hidden beneath her blanket. Carburetors, magnetos, fuel lines, control surfaces. The terminology was English, yet the underlying concepts were universal. The immutable laws of metal and physics were indifferent to the language one spoke. On the 4th day, Nancy unexpectedly appeared by the fence during the morning work detail. Her presence was irregular. It was not a designated landing day. She met Greta's gaze, then subtly tilted her head toward the tool shed. Greta's heart constricted. A premonition of unease settled upon her. She waited until the guard's attention was sufficiently diverted, then deftly slipped away. Inside the shed, Nancy was pacing restlessly, like a confined animal. "They are reassigning me," Nancy announced abruptly, her voice devoid of inflection. "A new posting, Nevada. I depart tomorrow." The words struck Greta with the force of a physical blow. "Oh, don't simply stand there." Nancy retrieved something from her jacket. A worn leather flight log, meticulously filled with flight times and dates. "Take it." "I cannot." "Yes, you can. Conceal it. Study its contents. Every entry represents a narrative. Every flight offers a lesson." Nancy pressed it firmly into Greta's hand. "I have annotated the margins with observations on crosswinds, emergency procedures, insights the official manual will not provide." "Why?" Greta's voice trembled with a mix of confusion and despair. "Why is it imperative for me to possess this knowledge? I will never fly. I am a prisoner. Once the war concludes, I will return to Germany. If there remains a Germany to return to, this is nothing short of torment. To glimpse a dream I am forbidden to attain." Nancy firmly grasped her shoulders, listened attentively. "The war is concluding more rapidly than you anticipate, and when it is over, the world will be irrevocably altered. Women have flown military aircraft. We've unequivocally demonstrated our capability. Do you genuinely believe they will simply relegate us back to domestic duties after this? Germany, your nation, has been defeated. Accept that reality." Nance's grip tightened. "But you, personally, have not been defeated. Not yet. Retain this flight log, continue your learning, and when this entire conflict is behind us, seek me out. Nevada, Naval Air Station, San Diego. I will personally instruct you to truly fly." Greta felt an absurd urge to laugh at the sheer preposterousness of the promise, and simultaneously to weep at its apparent impossibility. Yet, she heard herself utter, "Promise me, promise me." They had, at most, 30 seconds before their illicit interaction might be noticed. Nancy stepped back, but her eyes remained steadfastly fixed on Greta's. "One final detail. Before my departure tomorrow morning, an AT-6 will experience a minor mechanical anomaly. Nothing critical, merely a routine fuel line check. It will be temporarily parked near the south fence for approximately 20 minutes. Greta's heart pounded with a frantic rhythm. "What precisely are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that the cockpit canopy might not be fully secured. I am suggesting that if a prisoner possesses sufficient curiosity to climb inside and merely observe to look, without touching any critical controls, she might gain an understanding of aircraft that a schematic and a flight log alone cannot impart. That is an utterly insane proposition." "Perhaps," Nancy conceded, a faint smile playing on her lips. But you inquired about the importance of this. This is precisely why it is important. South fence, 20 minutes, at 6:30 a.m., just before the sun fully crests the horizon. If I am apprehended, you will inevitably be caught eventually regardless. One might as well ensure the risk is justified. Nancy then exited through the rear door. Greta stood alone in the shed, clutching a flight log entrusted by one who was relinquishing her own flying path for now, and holding the most perilous opportunity of her entire life. That night, sleep was an impossibility. She lay in her bunk, vividly imagining herself in the cockpit, her hands firmly gripping the control stick, her feet positioned on the rudder pedals. The once impossible was steadily transitioning into the realm of the possible, even if only for a fleeting 20 minutes. Elsa whispered from the adjacent bunk. "You are contemplating a foolish act tomorrow, are you not?" Greta clutched the flight log beneath her pillow. "Most likely. Will it be worth it?" The very question Nancy had posed. The question Greta had silently asked herself for countless years. She closed her eyes and saw the boundless sky. "Yes," she whispered with conviction. "It will." The sky still bore shades of deep purple as Greta slipped silently from the barracks. She had meticulously timed her departure after the night guard's final patrol. But before the morning shift commenced, the camp was enveloped in silence, save for distant snores and the faint rustling of wind through the barbed wire. The AT-6 was precisely where Nancy had described it, parked approximately 20 yards from the south fence. Its cockpit canopy was noticeably ajar. Greta's hands trembled uncontrollably as she approached. This was sheer madness. If discovered, she faced solitary confinement, or an even worse fate. Yet, her feet continued their inexorable movement, propelled by an impulse more potent than fear itself. She climbed onto the wing. The metal felt cold and reassuringly solid beneath her palms. The cockpit exuded the intoxicating scent of fuel, leather, and boundless possibility. The instrument panel, she observed, was far more intricate than the schematic had suggested. Altimeter, airspeed indicator, artificial horizon, throttle. Mixture contrôlage represented a distinct piece of the complex puzzle Nancy had promised she would eventually comprehend. Greta slid into the pilot's seat. The world underwent an instantaneous transformation. The control stick nestled perfectly in her hand, as if it had been waiting solely for her touch. The rudder pedals were ideally positioned. Through the canopy, she could clearly discern the runway, stretching toward the distant horizon, a symbolic path to all the destinations she had been told she could never reach. "Throttle forward," she whispered, recalling crucial notes from Nancy's flight log. "Mixture rich. Check oil pressure. Feet on rudder for taxi." She was not actually flying. She was not even engaging the engine. But for the very first time in her life, she understood precisely what it would feel like. The profound sense of power, the complete control, the intoxicating freedom. "Hands up, I can see you." Greta's heart seized instantly. An American guard stood on the wing, his rifle aimed directly at her chest. This was not the younger guard from previous encounters. This was Sergeant Miller, an older, harsher man with world-weary eyes. "I wasn't," Greta began, her voice faltering. "You are situated within an unauthorized military aircraft in a restricted area," Miller stated flatly, his tone devoid of emotion. "Step out, slowly." Greta cautiously descended, her nascent dream dissipating like the morning mist. She had been in the cockpit for a mere 20 seconds. 20 seconds that now threatened to cost her everything. Sergeant Miller escorted her to the commander's office. The rising sun painted the camp in hues of gold and red, and Greta observed the colors, a singular thought forming in her mind. "At least now I know what it feels like." The commander was Colonel Harrison, a tall woman with distinguished steel-gray hair, her numerous medals bearing testament to decades of hard-earned competence. She scrutinized Greta with the clinical intensity a mechanic might apply to a malfunctioning engine. "Do you comprehend the gravity of your actions?" Harrison inquired. "Yes, ma'am." "Attempted theft of military property, potential espionage, violation of at least 6 regulations I can enumerate without hesitation." Harrison leaned back, her expression unreadable. "Sergeant Miller advocates for your placement in solitary confinement for a month. My head of security demands your transfer to a maximum security facility." Greta remained silent, understanding that words would serve no purpose. However, Lieutenant Corbett, Harrison continued, her tone shifting slightly, left a document on my desk prior to her departure. A written statement asserting that you had posed technical questions about aircraft, that she had provided you with non-classified educational materials, and that you exhibited extraordinary aviation aptitude and genuine passion. Greta held her breath, a wave of relief washing over her. Nancy had, once again, acted to protect her. Therefore, my inquiry is this, Harrison stated. You committed a severe infraction, yet you caused no damage. You made no attempt to escape. You merely— She paused, her gaze piercing. You merely wished to sit in the cockpit, did you not? Yes, ma'am. Harrison remained silent for a considerable moment. When she finally spoke again, her voice had undergone a subtle transformation, softer, yet somehow more incisive. How old are you, Hoffmann? 24. Mom, what are your intentions once the war concludes? And it will conclude very soon. Greta had deliberately evaded this question for months. I don't know. Return to Germany, I suppose, if there is a place for me. And what then? Resume your role as a telephone operator. Marry a man who adheres to the belief that women belong solely in the kitchen. Harrison rose, walking toward the window. I enlisted in the army in 1918. I was informed my only permissible roles were nurse or secretary. Nothing more. I became, by all accounts, the most exceptional secretary they had ever witnessed. Yet, it still demanded 20 years to attain my current position. She turned back to Greta. Do you wish to know what I perceive when I look at you? What, ma'am? Myself. 30 years ago. Gazing intently at something I coveted, being explicitly told it was beyond my reach. Harrison returned to her desk. This is the course of action. You will be placed in solitary confinement for 2 weeks, not primarily as punishment, but as a measure of protection. Upon your release, you will be assigned to the maintenance detail situated near the airfield, where you will have the opportunity to observe and learn. Greta found herself unable to breathe, overwhelmed. Ma'am, the war is nearing its end. Hoffmann, the world is in flux, and perhaps, just perhaps, this evolving world will indeed make space for German girls who harbor a desire to fly. Harrison's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. But first, you will serve your designated time. Is that understood? Yes, ma'am. As Miller led her away, Greta cast a final glance back. Harrison watched her. Her expression an enigma. Greta could not quite decipher something akin to recognition, something akin to hope, within the austere confines of solitary confinement. Greta possessed Nancy's flight log and the indelible memory of those fleeting 20 seconds in the cockpit. It proved to be sufficient. The 2 weeks felt interminable, stretching into what seemed like 2 years. Her concrete cell offered scant Salisa's single meal a day. No window. Greta had nothing but Nancy's flight log and her own thoughts for company. She read every single entry until each detail was etched into her memory. Cross-country flights over Montana, encountering severe icing at 12,000 feet. Emergency landings in Kansas due to hydraulic failure, necessitating the arduous hand-cranking of the landing gear. Night flights over the Pacific, relying solely on celestial navigation when the radio systems malfunctioned. Every entry was a profound lesson. Every flight served as irrefutable proof that women possessed the capability to handle any challenge a man could. On the 15th day, she was finally released. The sudden sunlight was a painful assault on her eyes. The camp, viewed anew, seemed transformed. Smaller, somehow less imposing. Sergeant Miller escorted her to the maintenance hangar. Inside, 3 WASPs were diligently conducting a pre-flight inspection of a twin-engine transport. They looked up as Greta entered, their initial curiosity swiftly morphing into undisguised hostility. This is Hoffmann, Miller announced succinctly. She will be assisting with maintenance, under Colonel's orders. The tallest WASP, with striking red hair pulled into a severe bun, stepped forward. I am Captain Rodriguez. You are the prisoner who illicitly entered Lieutenant Corbett's aircraft. Yes, ma'am. Nancy wrote to me before she departed. She indicated you are worth the trouble. Rodriguez's eyes were unyielding, her gaze unwavering. Was she correct? Greta felt an instinctive urge to lie, to adopt a humble and apologetic demeanor. But she knew Nancy would never have apologized for her ambition to fly, nor would Greta. Yes, ma'am, she was correct. Rodriguez's expression subtly shifted. Do you possess an understanding of aircraft systems? I have studied them extensively. Studying is distinct from actual execution. Rodriguez gestured toward a workbench. This is a PT-17 carburetor. It is malfunctioning. Identify the cause. Greta meticulously examined the component. The float chamber was visibly damaged, and the needle valve was jammed. The solution, for someone with an understanding of the fuel delivery system and understanding Greta now possessed thanks to Nancy's detailed notes, was evident. The float chamber requires replacement, Greta stated with authority. The needle valve is stuck, most likely attributable to fuel contamination. A thorough inspection of the upstream fuel filter will also be necessary. If debris reached the carburetor, it originated elsewhere. Rodriguez exchanged significant glances with the other pilots. For how long have you been studying? Every night for 2 weeks prior to isolation, and continuously throughout the period of isolation. Why? The question caused Greta to pause momentarily. Because Nancy believed implicitly in me. Because my brother died believing I was utterly worthless. Because I spent 4 years being constantly informed of my inabilities. I am wary of internalizing those beliefs. Because, Greta whispered, her voice tinged with deep conviction, I wish to comprehend the mechanics of flight, even if I am never permitted to engage in it myself. Rodriguez remained silent for a moment. Then, she picked up a wrench and extended it to Greta. Rectify it. Greta's hands, though still trembling, meticulously disassembled the carburetor. The other WASPs watched, their expressions inscrutable, yet palpably expectant. This, she recognized, was a crucial test. They knew it, too. It took her precisely 40 minutes. When she concluded, the carburetor was impeccably clean, its float chamber replaced, the needle valve now moving with smooth precision. Rodriguez tested it on a stand engine. It ran flawlessly. Not unsatisfactory, Rodriguez commented, a hint of grudging respect in her tone. For someone who only engages in study. Over the ensuing weeks, Greta seamlessly integrated herself into the maintenance crew, becoming an indispensable part of the team. She rapidly acquired the skills to interpret engine compression readings, identify nascent metal fatigue, and accurately diagnose complex electrical problems. The WASPs maintained a tough, unsentimental approach. They neither coddled her nor ignored her status as a prisoner. Yet they diligently imparted their knowledge, slowly, almost imperceptibly. And with a degree of initial reluctance, they began to place their trust in her. One afternoon, Rodriguez discovered her in the hangar after hours, absorbed in the study of flight manuals. You are aware the war is almost concluded, Rodriguez stated matter-of-factly. Germany is effectively finished. A few more months, perhaps less. I am aware. So, what are your plans? Greta had been wrestling with that same profound question herself. I genuinely don't know. Repatriation. Most likely, back to Hamburg, assuming anything of it remains on, then what? Locate a husband, bear children, eradicate everything I have learned here. The underlying bitterness in Rodriguez's tone surprised Greta. What alternative do I possess? You can actively contend for it, as we have done. Rodriguez sat down beside her. Prior to the war, we were explicitly told women could not fly. Post-war, they will undoubtedly attempt to disseminate the same fallacy. But we will possess something they lack, incontrovertible proof. We flew their aircraft. We performed their duties. They cannot simply pretend it never occurred. In Germany, your nation will undergo reconstruction. It will require every conceivable skill. Engineers, educators, pilots. Rodriguez met her gaze directly. Nancy firmly believed you possessed the inherent ability to fly. I am increasingly inclined to agree with her assessment, but mere belief is insufficient. You must make a conscious decision. Are you prepared to fight for it? That night, lying in her bunk, Greta made a definitive decision. The war would eventually cease. She would, against all odds, survive. And upon her survival, she would unequivocally find a means to fly. Not because it would be effortless. Not because anyone would readily grant her permission. But because Nancy had revealed to her its undeniable possibility. And possibility, once truly perceived, could never again be consciously disregarded. May 8th, 1945. VE Day. The camp erupted in an emotional tableau of celebration. Guards cheered with unbridled relief. Prisoners wept with a complex mix of joy and profound uncertainty. Greta stood by the fence, silently observing a WASP execute a final training flight. This pioneering program, too, was reaching its conclusion. The military no longer required female pilots. The men were returning home. Rodriguez found her there. We are officially disbanding. By the end of this year, they offer thanks for our service. Just not sufficient thanks to retain us. I am truly sorry, Greta offered. Do not be. We always understood it was temporary. We ensured it made a lasting impact. Rodriguez handed her an envelope. This arrived for you from Nevada. Greta's hands trembled perceptibly as she opened it. Nancy's handwriting was neat and precise. Greta, the war is concluded. You are returning home. But before your departure, I wish for you to comprehend something essential. I've been flying for 7 years. I have meticulously logged over 2,000 hours. I have navigated through violent storms, endured mechanical failures, even experienced engines catching fire mid-flight. Yet, I have never witnessed anyone exhibit a more profound desire to fly than you did during those 20 seconds within that cockpit. The WASP mission is complete. They are repatriating us to civilian life, as if nothing momentous occurred. But it did occur. We conclusively proved that women are capable of flight. That truth cannot be undone. When you return to Germany, circumstances will be arduous. However, they will also be entirely new. Everything is broken. That inherently means everything possesses the potential to be rebuilt differently. Find a path, pursue lessons, beg, borrow, steal, whatever is necessary. And when you finally sit in a cockpit for real, not as a prisoner, not as a criminal, but as a genuine pilot, think of me. The sky awaits. Nancy. Greta read the letter 3 times, allowing its message to fully permeate her being. Then, she meticulously folded it and tucked it carefully into her jacket pocket, positioning it beside Nancy's cherished flight log. 3 months subsequent, she was placed aboard a troop ship, repatriated to a Germany in ruins. Hamburg, her hometown, was little more than a pile of ashes. Her family was either scattered or deceased. She possessed nothing but the clothes on her back and a flight log secreted within her jacket. But she carried something far more valuable. Somewhere in Nevada, a woman named Nancy Corbett believed unequivocally in her ability to fly. That belief, alone, was enough. Greta secured employment as a translator for the American occupation forces, diligently saving every single penny. At night, she immersed herself not only in English but also in mathematics, physics, and engineering, all the foundational knowledge she would require. In 1948, 3 years after the cessation of hostilities, she approached a small airfield situated outside Frankfurt. The proprietor was an elderly German Air Force pilot, a veteran who had lost an arm in Russia. He operated a modest crop-dusting business, utilizing 2 antiquated biplanes. I wish to learn to fly, Greta informed him directly. He regarded her as if she had suddenly manifested a second head. Women do not fly. I am aware. Teach me nonetheless. I cannot afford lessons. I will work for you without pay, maintenance, refueling, anything required. Just provide instruction. He studied her for a prolonged period. Perhaps he discerned a resolute determination in her expression. Perhaps he was simply in desperate need of free labor. Regardless, he eventually conceded, very well. But if you fail, you depart. No second chances. Is that agreeable? She did not fail. Her inaugural solo flight transpired 6 months later. The venerable biplane coughed and creaked with age. It bore no resemblance to the sleek T-6 she had briefly occupied years prior. Yet, as she pulled back on the stick and felt the wheels gracefully detach from the ground, none of those disparities held any significance. She was flying. Hamburg receded beneath her, the ruins, the painful memories, All the limitations she had been told she embodied. They all diminished in size, until they vanished entirely from view. Within the cockpit, with the wind roaring its ancient song, the engine thrumming a symphony of power, and the boundless sky unfolding majestically around her, Greta finally grasped the profound message Nancy had tirelessly sought to convey. It transcended notions of Germany or America. It transcended the need to prove anyone mistaken. It was, at its core, about the intricate fusion of metal, physics, and indomitable human will conspiring to achieve something inherently impossible: to defy gravity, to transcend the confines of the earth. She remembered the disbanded, and now largely forgotten WASP. She thought of Nancy, perhaps piloting cargo somewhere across the vast American West. She thought of all the women who had been told their place was unequivocally on the ground, and then, with renewed purpose, she ascended higher. 20 minutes later, she executed a flawless landing. The old pilot waited by the hangar, his customary silence unbroken. He simply nodded. A small, perhaps reluctant, acknowledgement that she had performed correctly. That night, Greta retrieved Nancy's flight log and meticulously made her very first entry. July 10th, 1948. First solo flight, DH-82 Tiger Moth. Pattern training 1 to 500 feet. Duration 20 minutes. Weather clear. Conditions perfect. Notes. This is what it feels like. This is what we fought for. This is why it matters. She paused, then added another poignant line. The sky is worth it all. Over the subsequent decade, Greta meticulously built a life intrinsically tied to the air. She piloted charters, transported cargo, and conducted essential aerial surveys. She never amassed great wealth, nor did she attain widespread fame, but she flew. In 1958, she received a letter originating from California. The return address clearly indicated Sacramento. Inside was a newspaper clipping. Nancy Corbett had achieved the distinction of becoming one of America's pioneering female commercial airline pilots. Accompanying the article was a photograph of Nancy, resplendent in a captain's uniform, standing proudly before a DC-6. At the bottom of the photograph, Nancy had penned a personal message. You were right. The sky was waiting. Proud of you. Greta carefully hung the photograph in her hangar, positioning it beside her pilot's license and accumulated flight logs. Occasionally, young women would approach, inquiring about flying lessons. Most had been dissuaded by their fathers, husbands, or brothers, told that aviation was not a suitable pursuit for them. Greta would then present them with the photo, recount the compelling story of the WASPs, of Nancy, and of that pivotal moment when she, a prisoner of war, first occupied a cockpit and truly grasped her own inherent capability. They unequivocally told me I couldn't fly, she would declare. But here I stand, so what is your justification for not pursuing it? Some would depart, discouraged. Others would remain. Those who chose to stay possessed that same unmistakable glint in their eyes that Greta had recognized in her own reflection 20 years earlier. It was a look that conveyed a profound truth. This was not a mere hobby or a fleeting whim. This was an undeniable necessity. This was a defining aspect of their identity. And she taught them to fly. Each time one of her students successfully completed their first solo flight, each time she witnessed the profound moment, they comprehended what it truly meant to ascend from the ground. Greta remembered a courageous young American pilot who had knowingly jeopardized her own career to bestow upon a German prisoner a schematic, a flight log, and an enduring promise. The sky was indeed waiting, and it continues to await. This powerful narrative of unwavering courage and indomitable determination merits widespread recognition. We encourage you to share these invaluable, often overlooked historical accounts with others who will appreciate the legacy of these extraordinary women who forever transformed the landscape of aviation.